Hi, this is part 1 of The Sunflower in Watercolor by Deb Watson. Today we're working on an Arches watercolor block that's 9 by 12 inches, and we'll be doing the entire painting using 3 colors: lemon yellow, ultramarine blue, and quinacridone red. This is the lemon yellow, and I'm mixing up a big wash in an old baby food container. I wanted you to be able to see how much paint I put in. I need to stir this up so that it's all consistent and it has no lumps. The easiest way to do this is with a small brush. I make sure there are absolutely no lumps and it's pretty evenly mixed. I'm going to start this using a large wash brush. Wash brushes are typically much softer than regular watercolor brushes. I load it up and I do one stroke across, reload, and do another stroke. In laying a flat wash, you could tilt your board a bit if you wanted to help gravity mix the paint. But I'm working flat and I'm trying to do as few brush strokes as possible. I'm putting it on pretty wet and juicy on dry paper, so it's going to dry with a lot of color. You can see I just did mix up enough. It doesn't hurt to mix up more than you think you'll need because we'll be using this color later on. Now it's dry, and I'm using my wash brush and some clean water to wet the side around the sunflower petals and the leaves. I'm not going up very close to them because I can use a smaller brush so I get consistent, even lines. I mixed up another wash of the quinacridone red in another baby food container. Now that I wet the paper, I tilt it to the side to drip off any excess water. That way I don't have puddles, but it's nice and evenly damp. I'm using a medium-sized brush to apply the wash. This is a wash brush that has a really good point, and it's a 3/4 inch oval silver black velvet. I start at one side of the painting and I'm working my way around. You notice I'm not dipping back into the water at this point. I'm putting the paint on full thickness. No water. And I start right next to the flower and then let it spread out a little bit. I'm not outlining the petals and then trying to fill it in because that'll leave you with a hard outline. I'm going to add a little more clean water so that this will spread a little bit more. I wanted to go all the way to the center with red in one spot, and I want to keep this red at its thickest. Now I'm adding a little water because I want to thin it out. I want to keep the thickest red against the top part of the petals. As I move down towards the bottom petals and the leaves, I'm going to let it be a little less intense and a little more watery. And pulling it out just a little bit with my wash brush. That gives this a more visually eye-catching center of interest, where the red is more concentrated up by the top petals. And now I'm using reddish water to swirl some of those out. You can see I've dumped water on here. It's fairly uneven. I'm going to tilt it a little bit and drip off some of the excess moisture. And I'm wiping the edges. That way it doesn't have a bleed back as it dries to create a bloom where I don't want people looking. At this point it's evenly damp, and evaluating this, I think I want it a little more explosive in that red. So I'm going to take my very small brush without adding water and just pull some of that red out into the area that's still wet. The red I watered down has really wimped out, so I picked up a little more of the thick red paint to put up near some of the corners. You can do a lot of work while the wash is still wet, but learning how much paint and how much water is the important part. I'm kind of getting into the curlicues, pulling them down. And don't forget, use your thick red to paint the center of the sunflower. Now you can see that some of the red and yellow make a bit of an orange color. But we still have a lot of primary color. We still have a lot of yellow and a lot of just red. By layering this color, we'll get a really intense, rich, beautiful saturated color for this sunflower. In the middle will be the center of interest. So I want to get plenty of paint on there. And I'm pulling that out one more time with just water. It's time to quit playing with it and let it dry. This is a new palette, and this is ultramarine blue. I'm mixing up a fairly thin wash. If you put blue over yellow, it's going to turn some shade of green. But if you paint it all the same shade, it's not going to be as interesting. And since what we're doing is getting very loose effects, I'm going to mix some of this yellow with the blue to create a green right on the palette. Ultramarine blue does not make a bright green, but the leaves really are not the center part of this composition. It's the sunflower. So having a subdued green that matches works quite well. Once again, I'm putting more color next to the petals and then adding some clear water. I'm working on dry paper so that my colors don't fade as much when they dry, and adding water to let it blend a bit. Now you can use any combination of the blue or green, and you can even add yellow back to this. By letting the colors mix on the paper instead of in your palette, and letting the water do some of the blending instead of controlling it all with your brush, you're going to get a much more exciting look. Watercolor can do wonderful things all by itself. Here I'm adding more yellow. Now I'm taking all the moisture out of the water. I'm taking all the moisture out of the brush and creating a thirsty brush to lift up a line in that leaf while it's still damp. Here's a little more blue. I've got 3 leaves, and I want each one to be a little different. I'm going to leave a line of yellow around this one. start out with a little darker color and go back to my yellow. It can be scary to just dip your brush in a different color because you can't be certain how it will turn out, but the effects will be well worth the worry. Once again, I'm darkening up the corners to keep people's attention up near the petals. I often layer things many times. I like building things up slowly, and it can give you great results. Now I'm putting a layer of fairly thick blue right over top the red in the center of the flower. This red, yellow, blue combination done in layers can look purple, it can look brown, it can look blue. And I'm adding a little water to the edges. I want it to look mottled, like the inside of a sunflower. And take some even darker blue up to the corners. And now I'm going to let that dry. That's the end of part 1.